yes. Oh, you just know when I saw the story I was going to talk about this. There's enough salt to sustain me here till 2025. Well, at least till the summer of this year, but anyway. Ryan Gosling waded into the Oscars Barbie snub row and only made things worse. Now, to work my way up to the crescendo that is this delicious morsel, let me give you all a TLDR of the Barbie movie, because I've seen it 3 times. Why 3 times? Well, because I watched it twice with some friends of mine, and the 3rd time on my own because I was going to do a breakdown of the film, but I decided, nah. Anyway, the movie starts with a homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, culminating with a bunch of little girls breaking their dolls and throwing off the shackles of domesticity. And the phrase "smash the patriarch" is written all over the scene with all the subtleties of a brick to your knackers. Followed by cringe lines like, Barbie now has her own car, her own money, her own house, her own career. The cliched, I'm materialistic as sin and I need no man shtick, echoing loud and clear. And then a bunch of multiracial Barbies in their political apparatus giving each other awards and kissing each other's asses. Frankly, I don't know what's more plastic, their world, their sincerity, or their vacuous personalities. The phrases feminism, equal rights, and democracy are all mentioned less than 10 minutes into the friggin' movie. And yet the men in this world have no power or agency whatsoever. It's a rather interesting concept of equality now, isn't it? Is it blindingly obvious yet this movie is pure propaganda? I think so. Which makes this all the funnier. Now, having watched it 3 times, I actually think the movie is an allegory of puberty. Margot Robbie's character experiences essentially the problems of aging and is told by one weird Barbie that she must venture into the real world to find the one who's causing her imperfections. Now, Ken goes with Barbie, and the story kicks it up a notch. Now, up until this point, Ken's entire world revolves around Barbie. He actually has agency, but is in a world run entirely by women. He doesn't know what it is or how it should manifest. He has all of these ideas floating around in his head, but he doesn't have the thread that ties them all together. Now, Barbie in the real world is rather confused because she's only familiar with her plastic bubble land. Ken, on the other hand, sees elements of what is missing from his world. So when he's in the real world, he sees men. He sees man, machinery, corporations, presidents, leadership, patriarchy. Naturally, he's enthralled by that. Why wouldn't he be? He's a man. Barbie disappears, picked up by the corporation who made her, who cares? Meanwhile, Ken picks up some books about masculine things and he goes back to Barbie Land. Yeah, I'm glossing over a lot of irrelevant details here, but anyway. When Barbie gets back to Barbie Land, the place looks quite a bit different. No longer are the Barbies in charge. In her absence, Ken managed to pull off a bloodless coup and made the place into a patriarchal paradise, and bizarrely, men and women now get along. You see, when the men rule, both sexes are happy. Isn't that something? Faced with this, Barbie becomes a wreck of a mess and just lies face down on the grass till someone else comes and fixes her problems. Doesn't that sound very familiar? This portion of the movie became such a potent mimetic counterpunch to the point where mainstream media even tried running embarrassingly desperate interference with articles like this from Newsweek. How men are watching Barbie wrong. Yeah, because how dare you men misinterpret our piss-poorly made propaganda? I mean, my word, if this isn't a mask-off moment of admission, I don't know what is. Now, the way the Barbies end up scheming to get power back is with the help of Weird Barbie and some other misfits, not to mention a pathetically cringe speech drowning in feminist cliché, is to exploit the helpful nature of men. So what they do is to fake being a damsel in distress, separate the Kens and the Barbies from each other, and then indoctrinate the Barbies with feminist propaganda one by one, and plan to induce petty jealousy amongst the Kens. Whilst the Kens are fighting each other, they take back Barbie World. I don't know how anyone thinks this movie makes feminism look good, or women for that matter. It just shows women are despicably evil creatures who will exploit men for their own gain. When everyone else is happy and they are miserable, instead of changing themselves, no, they must pervert everything else around them with absolutely no consideration for anyone else but themselves. And if we look at Robbie and Gosling's characters and the worlds they try to create or inhabit, coupled with Hollywood's rusted-ass recycled propaganda messaging for God knows how many years now, it becomes pretty clear why Ken stole the show. Barbie is a clueless ditzy bitch trying to find herself in a plastic world drowning in propaganda that fights the reality of nature. Ken, on the other hand, tries to behave like a traditional man. He builds, he conquers, and most importantly, he does so because of Barbie. The only moment in the whole movie where Barbie actually shows a glimpse of the real-world reality of men and women is when they're in the house that Ken made over. He says to her, "I always thought this would be our house." And she responds with a penny-dropping, "Oh, Yeah, welcome to the reality of the sexes, honey. Only took you well over an hour to get here, finally. And what Hollywood doesn't seem to understand, probably because their veins are flooded with more ESG than blood at this point, is that if you crank out bullshit propaganda for years on end, over and over again, that tanks and fails over and over again, the moment you have even a shred of its counterbalance, guess what's gonna stick out? The counterbalance. Duh! No one gave a shit about Margot Robbie's character because Hollywood's been knocking back the feminist bollocks like an alcoholic goes through cheap gin. Who cares? The popularity of Ken and the media wetting themselves should have been the writing on the wall. Then again, Hollywood is full of delusional morons. Oh, and speaking of which, and thank you Disproof for this gem, Hollywood burnt themselves on this altar, then gets one success and thinks this proves this can work. We must double down harder. Jodie Foster saying the $1.4 billion success of Barbie has changed everything. In the old days, they saw women as a risk. Not sure why they saw us as a risk. Now, virtue signaling aside, I'm not sure why you are lying out of your ass, Jodie. You do realize the internet exists, yes? Hell, your own bloody career proves you're full of shit. Foster herself was born in '62, and as far as I can tell, she got her first film award starring opposite Martin Sheen in the Canadian-French thriller The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane in 1976 at the age of 14. She would finish that year starring in the film Freaky Friday, where she was nominated for a Golden Globe Award. Now, obviously, she was best known for playing the FBI trainee Clarice Starling alongside Anthony Hopkins in one of the best psychological thrillers ever made, Silence of the Lambs, in 1991. So for her to say Hollywood saw women as a risk is bullshit. Everything that I've said so far, then, should come as a surprise to no one when you end up getting articles like this. Ryan Gosling waded into the Oscars Barbie snub row and only made things worse. Now, you see, here's the thing. When you have yet another plastic bin who's completely lost in a sea of recycled bollocks versus a better actor whose character actually had a competent, relatable story arc, which the audience clearly liked better, that one might receive the praise in the end. What a shocker. In total, the film landed 8 nominations, which seems staggering considering the whole thing is essentially a glorified toy advert. If it was nothing more than a glorified toy advert, you wouldn't be writing this article with a glass of wine in the one hand and a fist of seething coke in the other. But that's another article entirely. The point is that a film about feminism, which is a really weird thing for a glorified toy advert to be, is being celebrated by the Academy because of a man rather than the 2 women that made it happen, and people aren't happy. Speak for yourself, lads. We aren't just happy, we are laughing our asses off over here. And why shouldn't we? Hollywood has been cranking out pro-feminist tribe forum far too long now. And you lot have yet to realize, because you apparently have an allergic reaction to money, at least when it comes to losses anyway, that no one gives a shit. The audience does not like girl boss characters. They don't want strong independent women. They do not like masculine female types. Nobody wants to see that shit, especially not women. These people are so stupid. They are singing the praises of this film when in it, the female lead is a ditzy blonde who can't come to terms with the fact she's nothing more than her appearance and the world is scary. And the collective form of women are nothing more than a bunch of power-hungry assholes who hate the opposite sex. Meanwhile, the male lead is a man who seeks agency and when he has the right ingredients, returns to make a new world where the sexes actually get along and they're surprised that that guy was the cultural icon of the film. We are surrounded by idiots. Cheers for watching, and once again, I apologize for nothing.